So today we've launched the off-chain component of subspaces. So the idea of how these off-chain handles work is, let's say you're the owner of at Bitcoin, and you want to issue a bunch of handles off-chain. So you add them all to some sort of a tree, and then you take the hash, and this hash you submitted on Bitcoin, and this essentially commits to the names that you've added, and that way you can't revoke them later. And let's say you want to add a bunch more handles afterwards. So you update this tree, compute the new hash, and then commit the new root on chain. And this creates a bunch of proofs off chain that basically says the new hash is not double spending or not reissuing names that they have already issued in all the previous commitments. And these proofs could get very large. And this is why we use zero knowledge proofs. So we compress all of these hashes into a small certificate that could be referenced off-chain to show the proof of ownership. So the subs tool helps you do all of this. It has instructions that you could follow and play along with it and see how all of it works. And it has a subs proof command which generates a Stark proof, which is about 250 kilobytes, and you could compress this even further into about 1.5 kilobytes, which generates the root certificate for the space, which proves that the commitment that they have made on chain, as well as all the previous handles that they have issued, they did not double spend in any of these. And this essentially could be referenced in Fabric, and the handle owner just gets a certificate which shows that their handle is included in one of those commitments that are on chain. So it's very cool because it has a very low on-chain footprint. So it doesn't matter how many handles you're creating. It could be 1,000, it could be 1 billion. And all you need is to just commit this 32-byte hash on Bitcoin. And all the handle owners get a certificate, which is their ownership proof that they could use to sign things. Essentially creating a web of trust, a more modern version of a web of trust with a sovereign handle that's memorable, and instead of using public keys directly. So yeah, that's what subs do. And once we get the modifications to space D so that it could understand those commitments that were written on Bitcoin and be able to have some utilities to verify and reference those commitments, then we should be able to start testing on testnet 4.
Awesome. So yeah, this is kind of the final piece of the puzzle for the Spaces protocol, is getting these subspaces out. So this is kind of the last month before we to have the protocol done as it was originally designed, which is the subspaces. So yeah, as Buffer mentioned, the plan is just make some modifications to space D so that it can recognize these commitments and do testing on testnet 4, and in October launch this to mainnet so that subspaces will be live and we'll have truly decentralized cypherpunk naming on Bitcoin. So yeah, other things that we're doing is we're working on a wallet that we plan to launch around the same time as mainnet, which will help you to manage these subspaces. register and manage subspaces. And yeah, it's a mobile wallet. And also, we've done some work with Nostr, being able to like have a Nostr relay so that you could use spaces with Nostr. So we're hoping to have a demo with that soon, maybe in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or comments, raise your hand and I will add you as a speaker.
Yo. Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, it's Andrew. Looks good, Buffer. I have a quick question on what you've described so far. Is when you create the proofs and certificate prior to them getting committed on chain, is there any mechanism whereby sort of temporary validity can be tested? Is there a way to use those subspace names ahead of them getting committed on chain, or is that really the final act that kind of makes them available to the space D?
Yeah, so what we could do is like have the space owner issue like a temporary certificate where they essentially sign it with their key. So they say, this is a temporary certificate, it's signed by @Bitcoin, and it shows that like Andrew @Bitcoin is gonna be on chain at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as like there is a commitment that would, but yeah, I mean, this is sort of a bit more tricky because we don't want to have @Bitcoin like sign a temporary certificate that gets accepted by a client that should not accept this kind of certificate if there's already like a real certificate is issued. So I guess we could think about this, but yeah, maybe like some kind of temporary certificate is possible. We just have to think about it just a bit more.
Well, it may not be something that we necessarily want to include, especially for the reasons you cite, right? That now then you would have to then manage two different mechanisms potentially in order to determine whether or not a subspace exists and is valid. But ahead of committing it on chain, the person that possesses that subspace has no ability to sign on behalf of it, correct?
Yeah, it must like tie the handle to some commitment that is like on chain.
Right.
So yeah, so right now you could use subs and it will create a file called chain.json. It
Right.
has it has the commitments that should have been on chain. But once we have that like functionality implemented in Space D, then yeah, but the real certificate, like the real proof, like has to be like on chain because all other kinds of proofs would be basically like centralized, like having to trust the operator.
Right. So until that happens, that owner of that subspace cannot, as an example, sign a zone file that is then deemed valid for publishing. Correct. So in my mind, that makes sense that they wouldn't be able to do that. And where I'm going with this is kind of like the state that we have with like @Bitcoin, right? So you may have gathered up a certain amount of participants that have paid some amount of money to have their name reserved in anticipation of this, but yet there's not a way for them to do anything yet. But theoretically, you could say, okay, I would like, for instance, a web page to pop up if somebody puts in my subspace name. And until that person that owns a subspace name has the ability to register a zone file with an A record that resolves their name to the IP address, they would be able to do it in the mode that they could ask the operator, could you set up a record for the subspace name that I will have, such that it points to this IP, and if the top level space owner created a record to represent that, and then put it in the zone file, published it, then theoretically they would have some amount of utility even ahead of having their subspace name published. But it would be completely dependent upon the operator to kind of do that on their behalf, right? They can't do it for themselves. They have to have the operator do it on their behalf.
Yeah, yes, correct. I guess that would mean having some sort of temporary proof that would have to be invalid if a real certificate were to be issued. So right now, how I see like the model works is that like the operator receives like a bunch of requests, like let's say every day, and then they like batch those requests into like a single commitment, and they put it on chain. And the cost for that is just like 32 bytes, like regardless of like how many you're adding. And that's the only like real proof that you truly own like that handle. So yeah, the operator, I guess it depends on like the volume of registrations they're getting. So they could be handing out this proof like very soon, like let's say once every hour or so. But if like a space were to get like like just one registration once a week or once a month, then they would have to create a transaction to commit it, so they could give them a real proof to show that they have committed to this name, and they can't like re-register it again at some point.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right. I'll let someone else jump in if they've got questions.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hello.
All right, so the testnet, it's out now, and we have 4 weeks to test?
No, testnet's not out yet. It'll be in a couple weeks, probably.
Okay, then we got 4 weeks to test once it's out.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm going to just spin up a new machine. So what are the prereqs? I'm going to install Linux. Is there prereqs in a specific order that I need to install? Rust, Cargo. I've seen some of these names.
Yeah, so like there is instructions that you could follow if you have a Linux machine. Like for the proving part, like if you are an operator, you do need like, it would be recommended to have like a GPU if you have like lots of names that you want to compress the proof for, because proving is like computationally intensive. But as far as like the handle owners are concerned, they just get a certificate and they could quickly verify it. So that's fine on their part. But if you're just like if you want to just like play with subs, you could use like just like a CPU, and a Linux machine is fine. Yeah, so you could like there's like, you could probably like install it and just play with it in like 5 minutes or so. But if you run into any issues, you could post them on the group, and we could help with that.
Okay, so I'm just going to install Linux, and then I'll try to install Spaces. I'll wait for the testnet version. And then I'll let you know what I get. Because I remember when I installed Spaces for the first time, it said, Rust wasn't installed, Rust up. Apparently there's a difference between those two. And if I install Rust,
You do need to install Rust for this, but we will have binaries. Like once we announce testnet 4, we will have binaries. So you don't necessarily need Rust or anything to play with it.
okay. And I have some couple questions about the subspaces. So what happens if a top level space, somebody buys a top level space and they just create a ton of subspaces? They just create a ton of them. And then they let the top level space expire. Does anything happen to the subspaces? And when someone else tries to open up that name, let's say the top level name goes back on auction, can the new buyers or bidders, is there a way for them to see that they're bidding on a top level space that already has a bunch of subspaces issued?
Yeah, so like what's visible, so let's say someone issues a bunch of subspaces and then their space expires. All of those subspaces will be fine. Nothing gets revoked, so they will be bound to their secret pub keys forever. Like if a new buyer comes in and if they open the space again for auction and register it, if they could get their hands on all the previous registrations somehow, because all of this state is hidden. We only store like the commitments on chain. So if they could access that tree somehow, if the operator makes their tree publicly available, which is essentially like the database with all the subspace registrations, then someone else could download that and then they could continue to issue more subspaces. But if the database is like completely hidden and you can't really see what was going on, then you can't prove that the new names that you're registering did not exist in any of the previous commitments. So you can't really issue like any more subspaces. And this kind of makes like the subspaces that were already issued more scarce, because there can't be any more like new subspaces if the database is not available.
Oh, wow. So you're saying if I register at Bitcoin, issue a bunch of subspaces, or even just one subspace, let it expire, goes back on the auction, the new buyer can buy it, but they won't be able to issue any subspaces on it?
Yes, that's correct. They can't, because they can't prove that. I mean, part of why this is great is that we don't store any state on Bitcoin, only the 32 bytes commitment. So we can't see the state, and you have to prove it. And the only way to prove it is if you have the state off-chain somewhere. But I mean, like, there's only 3,500 spaces a year, so we will never run out of good spaces. And the valuable spaces will be very well protected and operated very well. So there should not be any issues there with like keeping at Bitcoin not expiring.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that with like traditional domain names. It's just like on an auto renew, and you just renew it with your credit card automatically. But with this, there is no auto renew, right? It's self-custody. So you're actually going to have to set a reminder to renew it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're operating your space in a professional type of setting, this probably is not a huge issue. Like you would have some mechanism to like continue to like keep it on schedule, and as long as you're issuing like new subspaces, that counts as a renewal too. So for most active spaces, this probably not like a huge deal. But yes, it could happen, of course. Like a subspace end up being expiring, like a space ends up being expiring, and then you can't issue anymore. but that's also like, it also makes the design very simple and nice to like wrap your head around. I mean, the whole spec for subspaces is like about 800 words or so. So it's very simple and easy to understand.
Oh, that's sick. So if you issue a subspace, that counts as a renewal. Okay, that's cool. What is going to be the code to issue the subspace or even just renew? Are they going to be different? So we have register to register. And is there a renew code to renew?
No, I mean, as once you issue a subspace, it can never expire. So you own it forever.
Okay, but what about the top level space?
Well, the top level space, we already have a renew command in space CLI. So you could type in like space CLI renew at Bitcoin and then you could renew it.
Okay, so register is just when you won the auction. Renew is when you want to renew it. Okay. All right, and one more question. So with the proof and the certifications when you're issuing these subspaces, what is that? Is that a file that is transferred over? Could it be possible that the owner of a top level space issues a bunch of subspaces, writes down the private key, I guess, of these certs or proofs, or copies them, saves them, gives the subspaces to users, and then the owner of the top level space actually secretly has all the information for those subspaces?
So like when you register a subspace as an owner, like you don't give the operator the public key. You just give them the private key and they will create a binding. So if you get like curious at Bitcoin, you just give them your public key and then they bind that to the name curious at Bitcoin. So they can't really like steal your private key because you don't give it to them.
Okay, so there's no way for the top level space owner to give out the subspaces but secretly take them or know the private key somehow in the future.
That's correct. Yeah, they can't.
Okay, cool. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
I think it's important to kind of comment on that a little bit as well. So in order for someone to actively maintain and manage a subspace, they will need to create a spaces compatible wallet or have a spaces compatible wallet available to them, right? Because that's where the public-private key is first created, and effectively you're associating that subspace with that wallet key pair. When isn't that correct? Because at that point, then they can further actions they can initiate through the use of their private key for operations like offering it for sale or something. Or I don't know if that's an option, but
yeah. So the mobile app that we're working on, it essentially makes you create a key pair, and it could talk to the operator to send your public key and the name that you want, and you pay maybe with like Lightning, and then once the operator like issues the certificate, it will grab it for you and maybe like store it as a backup in like iCloud or whatever options that you want to use through the app. So hopefully that makes it like super simple for like people to like keep like sovereign ownership of their handles.
right. But I think it's important for people that are interested in purchasing these handles. It's not just something where like you put in a credit card number and it's done. No, you have to either provide a public key through a compatible wallet that you already have available and created, or you have to load Akron Wallet, as an example, set up a signing pair, and then facilitate the getting of the subspace. Or if the mobile wallet experience that you're working on now is even less sort of burdensome in terms of startup and stuff, because I was just playing with the Akron wallet a little more yesterday, and I was realizing it takes a good bit of time to get synced.
Yeah, so like the app is even more simple than Akron. Like it doesn't really need to do lots of stuff. It's mostly off-chain. So it just creates a key pair, which is offline, and it talks to the operator, let's say through an API, and it sends them the script pub key and the payments, and then you get a certificate, and that's all it does. So I guess the sync time is basically instant, because it doesn't do all the work that is like done by Akron for like you use Akron if you want to use any on-chain stuff. So if you want to sell your subspace, then maybe you use like Akron for this. But as far as the app is concerned, it at least initially it's very simple. It doesn't even do any on-chain stuff.
I see. So it's really designed for that end user subspace name desire, purchase desire. Even then, though, you still have to fund it so that it has some funds to facilitate the payment. So there's that.
Yeah, you could use like Apple Pay or Lightning or whatever the user prefers. As long as you get your certificate and you could prove that through, let's say, through even like an Explorer or something, then you should be fine.
Right. Which kind of leads me to wonder, it's like, will like custom mobile wallets that are synced to a certain, or pre-configured, I should say, to a certain top-level domain, maybe you get the Bitcoin wallet, and it's like just load the Bitcoin wallet, generate the key pair, send the payment, boom, you got the thing done. And that doesn't necessarily handle, other top-level names. So you would have like maybe a branded wallet kind of experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how the mobile app will be. So maybe like Impervious will operate like a registry where space holders could use it, and their top level space will show up in the search result when you're like trying to register a handle. But of course, I mean, anyone could really build something like this. It's just for convenience. Like you could just use command line tools and register any kind of thing that you want and talk to any operator that you want. But yeah, for the user experience, something like this would be ideal.
Gotcha. I saw Evan had a comment in Telegram, so I'm going to give him the floor. If he's still got a question.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
It looks like it's working. Okay, cool. Yeah, so one question I had is about, I guess I got a few. So the first one I was thinking of as y'all were talking was, is there any way to, okay, so when let's say you're buying a space from someone else peer-to-peer, like I want to buy at whatever, is there a way to independently prove that, and let's say that space, that top level space, had issued some number of subspaces, and I guess you can't know how many technically. Is there a way to independently prove that like they are still in possession of the like correct database of names that they've issued? Point being, like, some independent way to prove that like that subspace for that top level space is not poisoned. Like, so you acquire that name and then you find out you can't issue any subspaces because, either they suffered some catastrophic loss of the set of names or whatever. So just curious people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the only way to prove that is if the seller would provide the the database. Maybe like they put it on like IPFS, and they put the hash of it in like and post it on the marketplace, so you could independently like verify that that you have the database and that you could purchase it, and that you could continue to issue more subspaces, and like how many were already previously issued. But I guess with this, there's still like what if they like made a new commitment while you were purchasing the space? But I think this should not be like a huge issue. It seems very like solvable, especially because like you could like just execute the transaction and like for purchasing the space, and while you have the database, they could technically see your transaction in the mempool and try to like create a new commitment before that. So maybe like there's some way around the timing that we do need to like take care of for like when selling spaces that have already like issued like handles. So yeah, that's a good question, and maybe we should think about like this timing. But the correct way to like prove it is to like show them the database.
Got it. So if you have this set of names, one thing I wasn't sure about is like if you have the set of names, let's say they've issued like 100 subspaces. If you have all 100 names, can you independently generate that like whatever piece of data gets published to Bitcoin, or do you need the top level spaces private key in order to do that?
No, you don't need the private key. It's
Okay.
all public data. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so if you have the names, it sounds like you could check independently.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So yeah, so it's really important that the list of names is not corrupted or lost or some way or in some way. Okay, and then the other question I had is like, is it possible to? I think I know the answer. I think I assume the answer to this is no. But if I own Evan at Bitcoin, is it possible for someone else to, or even me rather, to verify that subspace really does exist if I don't sign anything? So like, could someone else say, okay, I see Evan tells me he owns Evan at Bitcoin. Is there any way for them to check on that, or do I have to sign some payload in order to prove that?
I mean, as long as they could get an inclusion proof somehow, then you don't need to sign anything. So they could, like if the operator makes their database available publicly, they could search for Evanet Bitcoin and they will see it available in the tree, and there's a commitment on chain that links to that. So that's their proof.
Okay. Got it. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the only question I had. Well, I guess I have one more. So, actually, no, I'll hold off. That can come in a later time. So thank you for answering my questions.
Thanks. Good questions.
If anybody else has any questions, just request to speak and we'll add you. I don't know if anyone wanted to talk about TabConf. We're planning to be there. Hopefully we can have a workshop there. So
Sure. I can talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure if there's anyone else that had a question that wasn't related to that they have a chance to ask it, so that we don't run out of time and not get everybody's questions answered.
yeah, I think you can go ahead. If somebody requests, I'll let you know.
So, sure. So, I live in Atlanta. TabConf is in Atlanta. I invite everyone that can make it to come out. It's October 13th through 16th. It's a great technical conference if you're into Bitcoin or anything related to it. It's not going to be a lot of fluff. It's going to be a lot of rolling up the sleeve kind of stuff and quite detailed technical discussion. I think it's a great opportunity for Spaces Protocol to showcase what they've done. I presented last year on a DID scheme, actually the MicroStrategy one, and I first thought I would do it as a talk, and then I was later, I think due to scheduling sort of things with the number of people that wanted talks versus workshops, I was asked to make it into a workshop, which I was able to do. And I know that, and we had put in for a Spaces Protocol talk, which is fine. But I ran into a podcast of the founder, the guy that organizes this, and he was making it very clear. I threw this in the Telegram chat, but he's making this very clear that he was really wanting engagement as much as possible this year, and that workshops would be maybe even preferable to just talks. Anything where people can participate and maybe come away with something. And it got me to thinking that since it happened to me kind of the year prior, that this might happen. Don't know if it will, but it might. And if they do ask us to change it from a talk to a workshop, what could we do? And maybe it's where we could do both. But even then, the question becomes, well, I think we have plenty to talk about. And I'm not sure exactly come October 13th what will be, if everything will be completely mainnet launched or not. I know we're kind of shooting for that, but I don't want to put any undue pressure. But I was thinking, okay, if we did a workshop, what would entice people to attend and what sort of things could we offer in terms of, participating in such a workshop? And my first thought is well, if you can walk away with, a subspace for your very own during the workshop, maybe part of the workshop is downloading the mobile wallet and generating your key pair and, getting your name assigned and getting custody of it and then doing something with it, right? That would be, in my mind, kind of great. I think we have potentially up to 2 hours maybe to fill. So then I was thinking, well, what else could you do with it to kind of convey the value of what you're doing? I mean, there's a lot to talk about because these really become private property, right? This is property. Once you have even a subname, it's property that is yours forever. So using it in interesting ways that kind of demonstrates sovereignty of that property and your complete control of it, I think are compelling sort of notions. And I was thinking, well, you can show people how to use it to sign like a Nostr message and prove that that Nostr message is public, is aligned with the public key that you created to control it. Maybe a long form message could get published with then resources like images that are keyed off of Blossom servers, and then I don't know, it's like I started kind of getting broader and broader, and maybe what I've just described would even be enough given the explaining and kind of the doing. And I wanted to just kind of throw it out there, and also just to mention that I was able to register TabConf as a top level name last night. I kind of had this first thought a couple weeks ago, and I thought, gosh, maybe I should get that thing rolling. So I didn't want to mention it until I had it registered. So now that that's done, got something we can work with that kind of aligns with the event, and I think would be a nice, a nice takeaway for what someone attending a workshop might do. But I wanted to also open it up for other potential ideas to see what could be done, and then also, what could be done if we didn't get mainnet subspaces by that time. Maybe we'd facilitate the workshop on testnet and promise that mainnet would be forthcoming. I don't know. That's kind of a contingency fallback plan, but just initially, what's the thoughts? Any thoughts along this?
Nice. Yeah. I mean, let's think about this some more. But there's lots of cool things that we could do in the workshop. Maybe one of them as well is we could like have the people who like participate to like launch some kind of like onion service and tie it to like a subname. Like even if mainnet were not to be launched by then, we could still like demo this and have the people who participate maybe like give them an @Bitcoin handle, like reserve it for them for free for joining. So yeah, there's lots of cool things that we could do. So yeah, let's think about it some more and see what we come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of going down this road in my mind of like, how do you create an experience kind of where you're publishing some type of content that is where you can say completely end to end, from creating it to publishing it to serving it, that there's literally no centralized service that you're depending on at all, right? Even DNS. So that, to me, it would be kind of an interesting sort of premise that we could try to fulfill. And it may not be, for instance, maybe there's only one DNS proxy server that knows how to resolve this today, but theoretically, you could, I think, end to end put up some sort of like what we would understand as like a web page or something with images and text and stuff that you could say, this is your content. No central authority can rip it away from you. It's literally impossible for someone to interfere with your ability to publish your content this way. Those sorts of statements, and then kind of back it up with a real example.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, yeah, that's why I think like having an onion service would be like super cool because you're not relying on IP addresses. So resolving the subname to like some onion service and displaying something on like a web page. And I think that would be like a very cool demo. But there's lots of other cool ideas, like maybe like peer-to-peer chat, and instead of like public keys, you use the subnames. Yeah, there could be like lots of like things that we could demo. But yeah, to me at least, the onion stuff sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
But think about it more.
I mean, I've even thought for a long time that what we need is kind of a subspaces variant of NIP5, right? Which NIP5 is the quote unquote authorization NIP that says, here's my name, or here's my the name I claim, and it looks like an email address, and go to the web server at that domain name and look for a certain special file, and look in that file, it's a JSON, and if you see my pub key, then you know that I'm legit, right? Which is great. However, if you want to thwart impersonation, then you need a way to kind of not do something similar, but where a user can't easily like find a domain name that's very similar to the one that you used and register it and put up the same sort of JSON file on the web server and then completely impersonate you, right? I've seen it done, and it's possible. And I think when we talk about ID security and a lot of things that were with the advent of AI and stuff where people are getting scammed, impersonated, this becomes more and more an important type of topic. It's like, how do you really know that the person that they're claiming to be is that person? And in my mind, Spaces gives a much more resilient mechanism for proving who people are, right? And so maybe it's a different NIP. It's like, looks just like NIP05, but instead of the mechanism of doing a DNS lookup to get the domain name to an IP of a web server, you do a fabric lookup of the name to get the IP of the server and then it would be very similar, but it would just use the step that, avoids DNS.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good direction too. Yeah, there's lots of cool things that we could explore if we get the workshop. And do we have to submit the idea?
Yeah, the submission needs to be put together, and I wanted to have this discussion at least to kind of throw the topic out there before putting one together, but I'll go and put in for one, and based on kind of the ideas that we've just discussed, I'll rough it up. It can change over time, and as we get closer and what we find we can get working, we can adjust things. But what's important that if it gets accepted, what's important that happens ahead of the workshop itself is if there's anything that's takes a lot of time that a participant needs to do, like if step one is compile the Bitcoin core and then wait for it to sync, well, then we'll all be waiting for 2 weeks, to get through the workshop. So it's like, if there's something that's absolutely would be valuable that the participants have ready to go prior to the workshop, we need to get those prerequisites figured out and enumerated in the workshop description. But if it's something like, the mobile wallet, you can download it very quickly and easily, get a key pair, and it's only a couple minutes, well, then you do that in the context of facilitating the workshop, right? You don't have to say, you've got to have this all ready to go before the workshop starts. So it just depends on kind of what the commitment from the participant is in setting that expectation. So again, we don't have to figure all that out today, but that's as we get closer that if, hey, it would be great if everybody had, their own space daemon fully synced in order to do X, Y, and Z, well, then we need to kind of prep everybody that that's a significant lift to get that going. Anyway, so I'll put together a proposal for it and kind of rough it up as best as possible, and just get it in the mix of things, because if it's not proposed, it won't get scheduled, and it may still not make it. But in my mind, it gives us, if we can kind of promise that there's more of an experience that a participant's going to have engaging with Space protocol, that's a better chances of us getting accepted.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for doing that. And yeah, if you need anything, just let me know.
Okay, will do.
Cool. I think we're running up to an hour when we usually cut it off. So if anybody has any last things they want to ask or mention, go ahead. Otherwise, it was a good discussion. And you can, for those who don't know, you can go to spacesprotocol.org. From there, we have links to our Telegram group. That's where we're most active with updates and stuff. So join our Telegram. And we have this call the first Wednesday of every month. So, okay, thanks everybody for joining. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
See you guys. Bye.
All right, thanks much. Bye.